how we live our life in terms of relationships. And I pray, Lord, that those who hear will take away something from this so that they can grow in this institution of marriage that you have ordained for us. Pray, Lord, that the principles that we hear will be something that will help us rethink the way we live life and help us to apply those things to our everyday life, Master. So, Lord, help us. We give this time into your hands. In Jesus' name, amen. I want to welcome you to our life group session. It's been a long time since we had a session, a life group. I think it's been more than a month, more than 2 months probably, since we had a life group session. We're happy to be back again and to do this on a regular basis. And I hope and pray that what you're going to hear today will bless you, will help you think about marriage. For most of you, it's none of you are married. So these principles that that you're going to hear will help you. Some of them you may have heard already. Some of them you may know. But as we go through it, you may learn something new. And also, as you listen, I'd like you to ask questions. I'd like to have more discussion in the life group session than what we do with the Bible study also. So more discussion, more questions. So feel free to ask questions and engage with us so that all of us will be benefited. Because you may have a question that others may not be thinking about, but maybe that's the answer they're looking for. Okay, so feel free to ask questions. So today I want to share with you a couple of principles and deal with a few questions. And one of those questions I want to talk about today, and I think this is very relevant in the church culture, that is, should I pursue someone who is very godly, but that physical attractiveness is not yet there? Should I pursue such a person? They're godly wise, they're amazing, but you look at some certain standards of the world, they may not be there yet. Should I pursue such a person? We're going to talk about all that today. First, let's talk about some principles. Now, the foundation to dating and marriage is spirituality. It's something that I've often shared, and that's a foundational principle. Without God, there is the whole aspect of marriage, or the whole institution of marriage, will fall apart. So with God, we can do better in every area of life, especially when it comes to relationships. So when it comes to dating, before you date, make sure you have a good relationship with the Lord. Yes. Now there are some women who say that I'm in love with Jesus. He is my life partner right now. Now that is abnormal. That's not normal. It's a very absurd thing. People should not go to that extent where they call Jesus their boyfriend. Okay, so that's bad. But what's important is they should have a very good walk with the Lord. Spirituality should be on a good level. That's a basic principle. Another basic principle is they have to be willing to wait. If you want to date and marry, you have to be willing to date. Some wait, when will I turn 18 so that I can start dating? Nowadays, nobody waits. 13, 14, they start off. The longer you wait, the more you wait, the better it will be. Yes, because the more you wait, the more room you give for yourself to grow and mature. Imagine 14-year-olds falling in love. I wonder what their conversations will be like. I wonder what they'll be doing. First of all, they won't have money. They'll be broke. So even going out, but nowadays, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds have more pocket money than we had. In my time, having 10 rupees was like, I felt like, I've become a millionaire or something. I would buy, and even in my time, it was all 25 paise, 50 paise. 25 paise was the minimum. You can get chocolates and stuff. But nowadays, parents are giving more pocket money, which I think is a bad idea. Because it allows them to do things that they're not supposed to do at their age. So the basic principle of dating and marriage is be willing to wait. Be willing to wait. So just because you've entered your teenage years doesn't mean you have to date. Just because you're 21, it doesn't mean you have to date. Wait till you're ready for dating and marriage. More than anything, now people often ask this question, how do I know I'm ready? How do I know I'm ready? Ask yourself, are you ready to get married? Ask yourself, are you ready for marriage? If you're ready for marriage, then that is a point when you decide that, okay, I'm ready to date now. I'm ready to look for someone. Now, this principle might seem very outdated, but I can tell you it always works. It always works. So I encourage people to wait. Be willing to wait. These are foundational principles. Now, on top of this, I want to share with you a few more practical things that will help with dating and marriage. The first one is this: when it comes to dating and marriage, you have to be willing to change. You have to be willing to change. See, when you meet your potential partner, when you meet the person that you like, it's not going to work out the way you expect it to work out. It's not going to be like how you see in the movies. It's not going to be like those fairy tales. It's going to be something different. And in that process, you will be met with situations where you have to change the way you do things or change the way you approach things. Maybe earlier you were a bit more cutthroat, rude, very straightforward, very sharp with your words. But now you're required to be a little more softer. You're required to be a little more diplomatic with the way you speak or handle things. So relationships always demand change. If you're going to enter into a relationship and behave as if I'm going to be the way I am and you have to adjust to whatever I do, it's going to be a very difficult one in the coming days. So always be willing to change, because the way we imagine things in our head, it's not going to be the same way. Because when I see the way in which God works, He always writes the stories of our life in a way that is beyond our imagination. Yes? Now you may think, well, I know how to talk to a girl, I know how to talk to a guy, everything is going to be great. And often I've seen this, guys who are extrovert, who are very good at talking to the opposite gender, enter into arranged marriage most of the time. And on the other hand, guys who are introverts, don't talk much, they've always been lonely for a good portion of their life, they fall in love. Strange things happen. You don't know how God is going to write your story. Now, if you're going to be very rigid and say, no, I want it to be only this way, I don't want to give up, I don't want to change, then you're allowing a lot of trouble to come into your life. You'll lose certain things that come in your life. There was a person who was very, very rigid in his approach, very stubborn. He wants what he wants. He was a single child to his parents, so he was brought up in a very pampered way. So when he met a potential partner, and from what I heard, it was a good person, a good girl. But then within the first week of dating, he laid out lot of conditions. That girl left. She packed her bags and she's like, this is not for me. Now, you have to be willing to change, willing to adjust, willing to compromise. You have to be willing to go sometimes with the flow, the way things are going to be. Sometimes you'll face situations that will seem too overwhelming. You must understand this. Successful relationships are not built on your wisdom and strength. It takes God's wisdom and His strength to build one. Are you with me? So the key thing in all of this is be willing to change. So there will be certain things you have to give up when it comes to relationship, when it comes to marriage. There will be certain things you have to give up, you have to adapt. You might say, well, this is how my parents brought me up. I cannot change myself. Guess what? You have to. You can't say that this is how I am, this is how I can be. No, you have to make the change. And when you make the change, you'll realize that you're much more happier, much more happier. Often, psychologists would speak on marriage, or marriage experts, they say that get married around the age of 25, 24, maybe 23 to 27. That's a good age. Because when you get married around that time, you are still open to a lot of changes. But if you get married when you're older, making changes will become difficult. So that is why if there's someone who comes to me for counseling and I always ask, what's your age? And if they're 33, 35 and above, then the counseling for them is different. The counsel for them is don't take too much of risk because you may not like it. The girl may be someone worth trying, but it may be a risk that you're not willing to work for. Okay, but if you're 23, if you're 24, 25, you can take a lot of risks because you are at that age where you can make changes in your life, right? So the most important thing about relationship is always be willing to change, be willing to adapt. Because when you do, you'll be able to have a more fulfilling life, a more fulfilling relationship, more fulfilling marriage. The second thing is this: before you enter into marriage, deal with your insecurities. Now, I've spoken about this in detail, I think, maybe a year or two ago. This is very important. This is very important. See, marriage, dating and marriage is not a place where you come to seek counsel. Because the boy is going through something very difficult in his life. So he gets into a relationship just so that he can have someone to share. Now, that's not what relationships are meant for. The same thing can happen to the girl also. She's going through something, she wants someone to share her sorrow, her sadness with, so they fall in love. Now, before you enter into marriage, you have to deal with all of those things. You have to deal with your insecurities, you have to deal with your inferiority complex, all of that. Otherwise, the dating season or the marriage will become a big burden. Yes? Otherwise, the situation will be such that the husband will be waiting for a break from the wife. See, the way you behave with your spouse should be so wonderful, so beautiful that your husband should be waiting to come home and be with you. Your husband should get angry that you're not around him. You get what I'm saying? Wife should be upset that you're not around her all the time. That's what makes marriage beautiful. That's what makes marriage more enjoyable. But when people enter into marriage with a lot of baggage, memories of the past, sometimes people make bad choices in terms of relationship. They may have had some relationship in the past that really hurt them. It was really traumatic. Now they cannot bring that into marriage or bring that into dating. And every time they meet for a dinner or a coffee, they should not be talking about, oh, you know what he did, or he brought me here to this place, or you know what he said. It's a closed chapter. You have to deal with all of those baggages before you enter into one. Because if you don't, then the other person will feel like, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. Because see, out of love and concern for you, they will respond. They will speak. But it's only to a certain extent they can bear. It's only to a certain extent. So always before entering into a dating or a marriage situation, make sure you deal with your insecurities. Now, how do we deal with our insecurities? We have to first, again, goes back to the foundation of knowing God, knowing His Word. The more we do that, what will happen is God will deal with us. And that is why spirituality matters. Why does spirituality matter? Because He deals with everything that we have to overcome. Every challenge that comes our way, we will be able to overcome. Maybe there is a fear. Maybe we are someone who comes under some kind of a stress too often. When we go to the Lord, He will deal with that. He will help us overcome. He'll prepare us for the future. That's who our God is. David says like this, I praise the Lord who trains my hands for war and fingers for battle. When you look at the life of David, he was in the forest, in the field, and a lion came to attack his sheep. A bear came, and what did David do? Did he run in the opposite direction? Absolutely not. He stood against the lion and the bear and rescued his sheep. So long before, even before he sat on the king's throne, he was doing the work of protecting what belonged to him. And that is why when Goliath came, one shot, he was able to destroy the giant. You know why? Because he's done that too many times in the field. So those days where you're single, 18, 19, 20, 21, are days of preparation where God is dealing with areas of your life. But sometimes what people will do is they'll say that I don't want to spend my teenage years, the prime of my youth, on spirituality. Maybe when I'm older, I'll come to the Lord. Can I tell you something? You can come to the Lord when you're older. But that kind of work that God does in your life, in your 20s, you may fail to receive that at a later stage. Because even if you do, it may not be the same. Even if God works in your life, it may not be the same. So that is why, if you go to the book of Ecclesiastes, the emphasis is on seeking the Creator in the days of your youth. Before you lose your strength, before you feel like, that my strength is gone, or I'm weak, I'm old, give your life to the Lord. Remember your Creator. It's a very famous verse. In the days of your youth. Because when we remember Him, when we walk with Him, when we commune with Him every day, He deals with our insecurities. He makes us a better man. He makes us better man. I remember, when I was attending this course in my college on marriage and family, my teacher taught us how to sit in a restaurant. If you're going out with your partner, with your wife, how should you sit in the restaurant? What should be the position in which a man sits? And how you should open the door for the lady. All of those things, very, very nice things that makes marriage beautiful. So when I met my wife and we were dating, I would put some of those things into practice. And I always see her face, she's more happier. And she told me once, I'm happy to be with a person who knows these things. Right? See, you cannot behave with your partner like the way you behave with your sibling or with your parents. You have to change the way you do things. You have to learn ways to deal with them. So that makes dating and marriage wonderful. So deal with your insecurities. Give your the young adult years, the early part of your youth to the Lord, and you will be blessed in terms of marriage. So deal with your insecurities. The third one is this. The third principle is this. Approach relationship with grace and kindness. Relationship with grace and kindness. If you spend some time on Instagram or on other platforms, you'll find two extreme approaches. One is a toxic masculinity. Guys like Andrew Tate, I'm sure you've heard of him. And there's on the other side, there are feminists who take a very extreme approach. Now, both those approaches are absolutely wrong. Because what happens is, with toxic masculinity and a strong feminist approach, it sets a very unrealistic expectation on each other. Unrealistic expectation on each other. The way the Bible encourages us is to approach it with grace and kindness. For example, when we think of relationship, when we think of marriage, the way we deal with the other person should be in the most gracious way that we have dealt with anyone else. The way we speak to them, which should be full of kindness. The way we deal with them should be full of grace. Because if those two elements go missing out of a relationship, out of marriage, then one of the things that will happen is, slowly there will be an unspoken hatred that will grow within marriage or within that relationship. And eventually, that will separate them. So when it comes to relationship, always approach with grace and kindness. Now, if you look at the feminist side of things, feminists will say that we don't need man's help. We can do what we can. We can do whatever man can do, which is absolutely wrong. On the toxic masculinity side, they will kind of be very rough with the women. They will treat the women as, you belong to the kitchen. Now, I believe women have kitchen duties, which they do really well. But to say that they belong only in the kitchen and they cannot do anything else, or, for example, if you look at guys like, I think, some of them who believe in toxic masculinity, they're about having more number of women in their life than being faithful to one partner. So what happens is, they don't give their full attention to one person. Eventually, that also breaks up marriages. Sometimes when you look at the Bible, you'll see that Abraham had more than one wife. David had several. Sometimes we may wonder, what is God's design for marriage? Is it one man and one woman, or one man with multiple women? If you look at from the beginning to the end, God's design for marriage is one man and one woman. It's not one to many, not vice versa. Okay. But why did God permit these things to happen in the life of Abraham, David? Today morning I was reading about the life of David. It's like he took many wives. After he became a king, he had many wives, many concubines. Why did they do that? They did that because it was a cultural practice. It was a cultural norm of that day. So they did that. Even though God was not very happy with those things, and if you've seen the case of Solomon, he warns him very clearly, don't take too many wives. Avoid doing those things. But he went against the Lord's command. So there were people in the Old Testament who've had more than one wife, but that's not God's design for marriage. God's design for marriage is one man and one woman. So when it comes to marriage, that's the perspective we must have. I heard the story of a guy who was influenced by Andrew Tate. I don't know if you remember, a couple of years ago, he was quite famous on YouTube. He was releasing all these videos that talk about how men are different, how women have to be treated a certain way. Now, at one point in time when I saw those videos, I was like thinking maybe that's a nice idea. But over time, as I studied it, I realized that's very toxic. Because what happened is there was one guy who had bought one of Andrew Tate's classes, and he started watching them, and his friends said this way, that he started behaving more like Andrew Tate, like a very rough guy, would just talk down to women, will be very rude to them, will just treat them more like objects, and etc. So eventually, this guy, what happened is he became so arrogant that he was just, I think he was 18 or 19. He ended up falling in love with a girl, and eventually forcing her into a sexual relationship. And once that happened, he dumped this girl and went away. And when he was asked about it, he just dismissed it, said, I didn't do anything wrong. So that's the problem with toxic masculinity. It does not behave, men don't behave the way the Bible calls them to behave. Because what the Bible calls them to do is to be responsible as a man. Be responsible for your action. Because the very idea of be a man is to be responsible for your actions. But what happens is the idea of toxic masculinity makes you feel like you are a man, you can do whatever you want, you can behave the way you want, everybody has to fit into your kind of lifestyle, which is not the reality. Women who are in that kind of situation will feel very choked, will feel like there is no way out for them. And on the other hand, we are seeing this happen a lot nowadays. Men are being harassed. Yesterday, I think there was another case that came out where a man was harassed by his wife and in-laws. Recently, we heard about the suicide case where a man was harassed by his wife and in-laws. Somehow, you will see today that women carry this notion that they have to be treated so well. They have to be treated like a queen. So the man is there just to pay their bills. Man is not a money-making machine. He's way more than that. But if you look at the world today, it's sadly turned into something where they see men, and if he makes more money, he's more valuable. If he doesn't make enough money, then no matter who he is, what kind of character he has, he's not that valuable. And there are places where I've witnessed men very bad in terms of morality, very bad in terms of character, but they have a high place in society because they have lots of properties, lots of money. So that is often celebrated. The Bible is dead against that. The Bible is dead against that. Character is what matters. And so the feminist idea has pushed men to a place where it's all about what they can produce for the family. It's all about what they can produce. So if something happens, I think there is one cricketer, I don't remember his name. He's separated from his wife, divorced, and the wife has not allowed him to see his son for many years. I don't know. I don't know who that is. It's quite a famous cricketer. So every year this man celebrates his son's birthday by posting on Twitter, happy birthday. But I haven't seen him for a long time. Now, as a father with two boys, I can imagine how painful it is. Because fathers and sons, we have a very special bond. And at home, my wife and I, we have this rule that we are not going to stay away from each other for more than a few days. And every night when we sleep, our children will sleep with us. They're not going to sleep in the other room, even if guests come, not allowed. They have to sleep in the room with us. Because, the family bond that you have and my connection to my son, and sometimes in the night I'll be working late in the night, he'll ask me, when are you coming, Daddy, to sleep with me? He's not going to ask that after a couple of years. So I can imagine, a father separated from his wife, forcefully. And in many cases, the court is for the women. Court is for the women. That is the reality. Now, women may say, well, they favor the men more, but reality is a woman can give a complaint and it'll be taken up very quickly versus if a man does it. So, toxic masculinity feminist ideas have pushed men to the extreme, and because of which many men have taken their life, have committed suicide. There was another case, I think, that was reported last year or the year before that. A woman and her husband, they were separated, they had one son. So the custody was going on, the court case was going on of who gets the custody of the child. And somehow I think the case was tilting more towards the husband. It was in favor of the husband, and this woman decided, I'm not going to allow my son to see his father. And guess what she did? She took him to a guest house in Goa, killed him. Because she never wanted her son to see his father. Just the thought of, the way she killed the son was choked him with a pillow. Just the thought of killing your own child and seeing him suffer to death. If she could have just stopped somewhere in between, the son would have survived. But then, that idea, that ego, that anger against men, because when you look at what feminism does, it drives women against men. So anyone with a feminist idea, anyone with a toxic masculinity ideas, such people cannot survive in relationships, because that's not how God made relationships to be. Rather, the Bible calls us to be gracious, loving to one another. If we are called to be, imagine this, if you're called to be gracious to strangers, to people whom we see on the streets, then how much more should we be loving to our own spouses? But the ideas that are often followed in our world today is turning men against women and women against men. So as God's children, what we should do is always be kind, always be gracious, always be nice to each other. That'll take marriage a long way. It'll make life more fulfilling and and happy. All right, so approach it with grace and kindness. If you have to talk about all these cases, and for some reason, and I read everything. I follow criminal cases, I follow stories, very crazy things that are happening in our world today. And as God's children, we have to be an example. Like how the early church, I was talking about it last week, marriage was in shambles, but the early church became an example of marriage. We have to set the standard for what relationship should be like. All right? So far I've shared 3 things with you. The next one is this, the fourth one. When dating, I'm talking specifically about the dating stage. When dating, avoid behaving like a husband or avoid behaving like a wife. Reserve that for later. Now, we must understand dating is not the same as marriage. A husband-like leadership is meant to come only after marriage, not before that. There are couples who fall in love, wonderful thing, fell in love in a beautiful way, but now they're conducting their own prayer sessions. They're now, reading Bible together. It may seem like a very spiritual activity. You don't have to do that. You don't really have to do that. Maybe you can just say a word of prayer. That's enough. But starting to behave like a family before marriage is always not healthy. Reserve it for marriage. Why do I say that? See, the dating stage is special in its own way. Enjoy that. Now, when it comes to marriage, it's going to be a different, and it's special in its own way. Enjoy that. See, when it comes to dating, you may meet the person, you may spend time with them, but you have a limited time. And then you'll be like, I wish I could spend more time with you. But we have to go back to our own places. That's the limitation. That's where it is. So you long to be with them, but you cannot be with them. And that in turn kind of prepares you for marriage in the future. You look forward to the day when you can be together. So when you have limitations around dating, it'll be a very wonderful experience. But if there are no limitations and people start behaving like husband and wife, they start checking on each other. Did you eat? Did you have your medicine? Did you do this? Or what are you doing? Can I come and help you? Avoid all of that. It's not necessary. Don't behave like a husband and wife in the dating stage. Because dating is supposed to be a certain way. It has to have limitations that makes it beautiful. Marriage has no limitations. That makes it beautiful. You get what I'm saying? So if it's interchanged, okay, if it's switched, the order is switched, then it's going to be difficult. And oftentimes there are couples who are so close. I remember this one couple when I was very young. I remember seeing them. They cannot be away from each other. Okay, even if they're traveling in a bus, they have to sit and they will talk and giggle and laugh, and everybody will notice them. This was before marriage. Now people around them are kind of okay. We were all okay because we know that they are a couple. But after marriage, the wife sits in the front, the husband sits behind. They're not talking the same way. Now it's a little awkward. You guys were talking so much before marriage, and now after marriage you're like in two separate seats. What happened? People often get so too involved in the dating stage that once they get married, they don't know what to do. Reserve certain things for marriage and reserve certain things only for dating. That makes it special. All right? Any questions so far? Any questions? Kenneth, you have some question? I thought. Do we have a mic ready for question? So one of the questions that is often asked or spoken of is this: should a boyfriend lead his girlfriend? There may be a situation where the girl is not spiritually strong in the Lord, and maybe the boy is very strong in the Lord. Maybe he's a worship leader or a pastor or something. So in those cases, it may seem like the boyfriend is going to help the girl now grow stronger in the Lord. Is going to be a leader for her. But should that happen in the stage of dating? The answer is no. It may seem like a good thing to do, however, it is not appropriate for a dating stage. Because when it comes to dating, get to know the person better. Get to know the person better. Talk. And you may ask, what do we talk about? There are a lot of things you can talk in the dating stage. Some of the things that you can talk about is how the future is going to be like. Share your goals. Share your plans. Share your ideas. What you think, what you're thinking about life. All those things. Think about the future. You can have a lot of conversations around that. So those are the kind of conversations you should be having, rather than the boy leading the girl, or in some cases, the girl is really strong in the Lord and the boy is just he's not been attending church. But now because he's interested in the girl and they're in a relationship, they're starting to attend. So, growing up in church, I've seen this happen. If the girl brings the boy to the church, she will usually sit in the front and the boy will be at the back, and time to time she'll be looking, is he praying, is he worshipping? All of those dramas will be happening in the church. That kind of care is absolutely unnecessary when it comes to dating. Yes? Absolutely unnecessary. So each one should not be leading each other. So make sure that you remain within the limits. Don't become a leader for them. Because until you get married, okay, if you're a girl, until you get married, your leader is your father. You get what I'm saying? Your leader is your father. And if you have a caretaker, that's your mother. Same goes for the boy. Until you get married, you have a leader. That is your father. You're accountable, you're responsible. Now, even after marriage, you're accountable to them, but it changes a bit. The dynamics change a little bit. Because you become your own leader now. You're in charge of a few people in your life. So until you get married, whether it's a boy or a girl, remember this. What happens is they know that their daughter has found a boy, and now she's talking more to the boy, and they'll feel like she's already gone out of our home. Or the mother will feel that way with the boy. Oh, he's not talking to me now, he's talking to the girl all the time. See, no matter, talking will seem very necessary, but always balance it. Because remember, as long as you are single, yet to be not yet married, your father is your leader and your mother is the one who takes care of you, of all your needs. Is that clear? Doing things ahead of time will put more strain on the relationship. Now, I want to deal with a couple of questions. That is, one of the questions is, I found this from an article in Desiring God, and I would highly recommend this ministry if you'd like to learn more about scriptures, desiringgod.org. The question here is, should I date a godly girl I do not find attractive? Should I date a godly girl, or say a godly guy, but he is not on my attractive list? How do I approach that? This is a common question you will find in the Christian circle, because when it comes to the faith that we hold, godliness has greater value. Yes, the Bible also talks about that very clearly. The question is, sometimes people will have is, she's not attractive or he's not that attractive, but he's godly. Should I pursue? What do I do? I said this earlier, physical attraction matters. It's not that it doesn't matter. But in the Christian faith, what we put above attractiveness is godliness. Because all this physical beauty can fade away. The kind of attraction that we have will fade away. If you look at teenage boys, especially in my age when I was growing up, some of these Bollywood actresses were their crushes. I remember my friend was upset one day because this actress called Genelia, I don't know if you've heard of her, Genelia D'Souza, she got married. Whole day was like, day, she got married. What are you going to do about it? Day, she got married. See, you'll find a lot of things attractive when you're 18. You'll find a lot of different kinds of people attractive in your 20s. But as you grow older, you'll realize that beauty is skin deep. All these attractiveness will change one day. But something that will hold very valuable for a long time, for the rest of your life, is godliness. The Bible clearly says that godliness has great value. The question is, if I find someone godly but do not find them attractive, how do I approach that? The practical way to do that is, instead of dismissing them away, just spend time, be a friend. Be a friend. Because as you talk to the person, over time what will happen is, you will begin to realize that some of these preferences that you have about beauty, about attractiveness, is just something that's not that important. So Matt Chandler said like this, godliness seems good to godly people. He actually uses a word that I'm very hesitant to use from the pulpit. Probably I'll share it with you later. Godliness is, it's a nice way of putting it across, but I don't know if it's appropriate to speak from the pulpit. So, if you get in proximity to the person you find godly and you learn more about them, And you will begin to realize that some of the things that you have in terms of physical attraction is not really. You'll realize that life, godliness is way more valuable than physical attraction. So, one of the things is, I've often seen this, that people take one look. She's not the one for me. Why? Not because they actually know about them, it's because they don't find the attractiveness there. It's not on that level. Reality is life changes. As you age, so probably you may fall sick, and that physical attractiveness will leave. What are you going to do then? So physical attractiveness is not the main parameter. What is most valuable is godliness. Now that doesn't mean, at the same time, doesn't mean you just go get married to anyone. You balance it out well. Make sure that you put godliness first and then everything else comes second. Because once character is there, once godliness is there, you will enter into a relationship, you will enter into a marriage which is safer for you in the long run. Because men who often marry just for the sake of beauty, one day realize that wife gave birth to a child, she doesn't look the same way anymore. And so that is when, when women just deliver a child and they're in that season, the hormones are all out of place and they're a little different to look at. They go after different women. This happened with Rihanna. I don't know if you know about her. When she was pregnant, husband was having his own enjoyment. And eventually she found out and they divorced. Physical attractiveness will always fade away. If life is based on physical attractiveness, truth is, we will never be satisfied. We'll never be satisfied. But when we put character and godliness, morality first, we'll always be satisfied in a way that will glorify God. Is that clear? Anybody has any questions about this? I can talk a lot more, but I want to have some discussion with you. Has anyone asked you this question? Maybe one of your friends asked this question. Good guy, but not that handsome. Should I still date him? And how have you answered those questions? I have one more question to deal with, but I just want to talk about this. Yeah. So the more you know a person, the more you'll make a better decision.
For some people, godliness in itself could be a part of them being attracted to them.
Mm-hmm. That also can happen. I've seen that happen a lot in ministry circles. So godliness can be an attractive thing also. So if a man or a woman, boy or a girl trying to build a lasting relationship, a lasting marriage, it's better they invest in godliness more than looks and all that. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't go to the gym or do anything. You should keep yourself in a good shape But more than that, if more than that, uh, godliness has greater value. Kenneth has a question. He has texted me the question. If God is sovereign over marriage, does it mean we should passively wait for the right person or actively seek a partner? Now, before I answer this question, I want to ask all of you here, what do you think? If God is sovereign over marriage, should we passively wait? Should we wait or actively seek? Sorry? Actively seek, okay? Who says, does anyone say that we have to passively wait, just wait for a period of time because God is sovereign? You have a question? Yes. Yeah, why don't you come here? Join us. Hmm. You had anything to add to that, or is that same question? Hmm. Okay. What do you think? What do you think, Abraham? Better to look, but God is sovereign. No, we should wait.
But God also gave us common sense and brains to use.
Okay, but God's wisdom is bigger than ours.
God also asks us to ask for wisdom.
Right.
Maybe that means we should ask and then work with
Mhm.
God, not on your own.
Okay. Okay.
Also, there might be seasons of
Hmm.
waiting.
There might be seasons of waiting. Okay. We can divide our life this way. There'll be a time when we are not actively seeking, but more about building our life, building our career, building our relationship with the Lord, building our skill set, investing. Those are the teenage, the young adult years, the early stages of your life, like 21, 23, 24, those stages. But after that point, you have to actively seek. Now, God is sovereign over every area of life. He's sovereign over your studies. He's sovereign over the work that you do. He's sovereign over your marriage. He's over it all. But what God expects us to do is to also look, because marriage is always built on the idea of pursuit. It's never about, I'll wait and God will bring someone to my doorstep. That kind of an idea is not there. Because when you look at marriage, it's built on the idea that a man has to find a woman. And that is why, if you look at Proverbs and even other passages, a man who finds a woman, a good woman, is a godly woman. So the idea of finding, pursuing is always there. So the way we have to approach when it comes to the sovereignty of God is that we know that God has His plan, He is working out something for us. However, specifically when it comes to marriage, see, God may reveal certain things about different areas of your life, like where you should go for ministry, what you should do, where you should start a church, or with your career. God may speak a lot of things. But when it comes to marriage, marriage is something where decisions are made differently. Like, for example, when we are praying about ministry, we are praying for guidance, where to go, what to do, whom to meet, all those things. But when it comes to marriage, God is never going to say that this is whom you are supposed to marry. God is never going to reveal this is the partner for marriage. If anyone is holding on to such an idea, they are holding on to something that is unbiblical. There are many, I think this is very common in the Pentecostal environment. There are some women that put off marriage because they say that they have not found the right one yet. But the problem actually is that they have not pursued yet. In other words, see, pursuit for a man is different, pursuit for a woman is different. Men are known to go around and make a proposal. Nowadays, women also do that. But men predominantly do that. Okay, they will take the first step. But women, what they should do is they should not, lock themselves up in the house, but they should bring themselves out to a public place. You know, they should present themselves before people. Not like they're coming out just to meet men, but they just should have a good social life. That is when people will notice you. That is when men may notice. So the work of the act of pursuit for a man and a woman is slightly different, but both should actively be looking for a partner. Because if they stop, and one of the counsel that I give is never stop looking. Maybe in your 30s, don't give up the idea of marriage. 33, don't give up the idea of marriage. Because what happens is when it comes to marriage, once you give up the idea of marriage, and once you believe that it will happen when it has to happen, once you become passive about it, you will somehow become comfortable being that way. You'll somehow become comfortable because once you cross a certain age, you'll find it easy and more happier to be single. That is where many people actually in their 30s, they're just happy the way they are. Because, see, what happens for a man, speaking from a man's point of view, is by the time they're 30, 33, they're starting to make good amount of money. And they don't have anything to spend on. So it's going towards savings, going toward investment, and other things they can do with it. And it seems like a good thing for them. So many stop, and once they stop, it's hard to start again. So the idea of actively looking should never stop. God is sovereign, but what will happen is when we actively seek, God in His sovereignty will make way for the right person to come into our life. Okay, so this is another thing, that is, we can have faith in God, but if we have no deeds, it's worthless. So God is sovereign, yes, but we have to also put in the work that is required. So when it comes to actively pursuing, once you're at that age, you should not stop. You should do it. Even if it takes time, you should not stop. Any other questions on this? You have anything to add? Tarun, you have anything to say? I think Tarun looks more ready for marriage. He's finishing his course. Who's thinking of marriage next? You can be honest. I know Raj is thinking. I'm just joking. Who's thinking of marriage next? Yeah, like what's like the next thing? I should get married. Anybody? Are you shy?
What if you are not with your parents?
Say that again, please.
You might not, marriage might not be the next thing in your idea or plan. Your parents' schedule.
Yeah, parents are always like that. They will, and it's for a good reason. Before we finish 12th standard, they're already planning what course we should join. And before we finish the course, they're planning who we should get married to. So they're always one step ahead. But again, it comes down to your decision.
In active pursuit, nowadays we see the dating app.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you have to say about active pursuit and being involved in dating apps?
So the question is, what do you say about active pursuit and being involved in dating apps? I would recommend that we stay away from dating apps because the nature of these apps is more of a casual hookup than a serious one. I would recommend other sites, like there are Christian singles or Christian mingle, Christian matrimony sites. There are good sites where you can find a potential partner. But those are good. But most of these dating apps like Tinder and others are promoting a casual, flirtatious, a casual hookup. So I would not recommend, because you may find a person that is I don't know if you heard this story. Came up in the news recently that one man was maintaining, I think, was a tech guy, probably had some software, and he was maintaining chats with close to 80 women on Tinder. And I saw in the comments one guy was like, 2 years I'm struggling to get one person. How did this guy get 80? So the thing is, if you ask the question, are those people who are on the platform genuine? Are they looking for something, long lasting? Answer is no. So it becomes more of a waste of time than something worthwhile. So I would recommend staying away from dating apps, but there are some good platforms for marriage. So,
Pastor, when you speak about physical attractiveness,
yeah. Mhm.
is it, for example, is it right for the partner to like motivate the other person to probably like dress well or like work out, or should we like do it, or just like you
Yeah.
said in terms of
It's
chemistry?
good to motivate. So let's say if it's in the dating stage, right? It's good to motivate them, but you should not talk like the mother. That's the line. So the thing about dating is it has a lot of limitations, a lot of boundary lines that you shouldn't cross. So if, let's say, the boy is motivating the girl, he should just give a different hint. Like, if you're going to say something to a girl that you should work out, that'll cause a lot of problems. He should find a way to say that in a very nice way, or probably not touch the topic. Because, see, you love that person the way they were, okay? Now wait till you get married, because after marriage, you can say a lot of things, and they will take it. Okay, because you live under one roof, you're responsible for each other. Marriage is a different thing. That's why one of the good things is date for a short while and get married as soon as possible, because then you can say whatever you want to say and they will accept it. They may not like it, but they have to accept it. But in the dating stage, there are limitations. So uh, can be said, can be motivated. Now men are motivated differently, women are motivated differently. So it has to be done with a lot of careful thought than just openly speaking. Because one issue that can come up is, if that is spoken too much in dating, one of the common issues that I've observed is that suppose if the boy is saying to the girl, then the girl might think, oh, maybe he's looking at someone else. Maybe he's thinking of someone and comparing me with her. Or maybe he's comparing uh, me with his ex. Like all those kind of issues come. It's a unnecessary dating. Imagine it's just like going for a walk in the park. You go, you enjoy the beauty, the scenery, hold hands, walk, talk about life, think about life, make commitments. That's it. Don't get into giving advice. Don't borrow money from each other in the dating stage. If you go out to eat, split the bill. First date, let the man pay. That's fine. But beyond that, you go out, split the bill. You go out to do something, do it within your own means. Okay, look at how much you have. Don't swipe credit cards. Don't buy expensive gifts during dating. All that is for marriage. Never buy gifts. I would highly recommend that. All those things, if it can be avoided, but just enjoy being with each other, being around each other's company, being each other's friend. That will lay a solid foundation for marriage. So yeah, the answer is it can be done, but it has to be within the limits. One last question I want to talk about is, so good question. When should a single stop dating? Let's say a man is single for a long time. At what point should he stop dating? Now this is for specifically for people, they're actively pursuing, but somehow nothing's working out. Okay, so what should they do? Now maybe they were pursuing someone, it was about to culminate in marriage but broke off. Now should they start dating again? And how many times should that repeat? The question is, how long should single, when should a single stop dating? The practical answer, I think, will be maybe about 26, 27. Get out of the dating scene and actively pursue a partner for marriage. Because you don't have time to waste. You don't have the same time you had when you were 23 or 24 or 25. Once you hit 26, 27, life changes, and men around that age, 27, 29, 30, or 31, they become more serious with their careers. So they won't be able to devote much time for dating and all that. So in those stages, they should stop dating and seek the help of their parents to find someone for them, or maybe if they find someone, get into marriage as soon as possible. Okay, men should not go on dating. Women also should not go on dating at a later stage in life, like after 28, 30, and all that. It'll seem unnecessary, a waste of time. Because by the time you're, at the late 20s or early 30s, you'll be more mature. You'll be mature enough to make a decision. You can spend 1 hour with a person and figure out a lot of things about them. You'll be able to decide, okay, this person is good for marriage, than when you were like 23 or 24. So, any thoughts?
So when you said about when should a single person stop dating, so when can that single person know, like, I should not date this person? In terms of one, for example, just like you said before it gets to an age. So before they break it off, when should that person know, okay, this is not my cup of tea, or when should the person get back out? Because when they start talking, then obviously the one person who's much more involved in that person. So when that happens and one person will break it up, then how do they do it nicely rather than making it
Tell me the last statement. How do they break it off?
rather than making a big deal out of it, making it much more serious, because this was a talking phase. So when the other one person is taking it too seriously, another person is actually looking for looking for a connection. So how do they wisely break it off?
Yeah. You used a word there called talking phase. Right. Yeah. So if someone's in the talking phase, it should not. The recommendation is don't go beyond 30 or 45 days. Because the longer you go, the more the feelings are, they're mentally involved in that. So breaking up after anything after like 3 months is going to be a big deal. It's going to be painful. So that way it's going to be difficult. The problem that's often very prevalent today, it's a good question that you asked, is many keep on dragging the talking phase. They're talking. They don't know what they are, situationship, whether they are in it or outside. They're not really sure. They just, in that phase, they're continuing to do what seems good to them. But there's a problem with that. There's a problem with that because when a person gets involved, their feelings are involved, they like the person, breaking up becomes difficult. So the talking phase should not last for a long time. The other reason why it lasts for a longer time nowadays is because partly because they don't know how to take the right decision. They're just confused. So they're so confused that they just keep putting it off, and all of a sudden they'll be like, no, this is not going to work out for me. Because the thing that we have to be careful, and we will always be held accountable if we break another person's heart. Okay, we'll always be held accountable because the Bible does not permit that. So when we get into it, we have to figure out as soon as possible. I would say sometimes even take 1 week time, couple of days, talk to the person, and figure out. You will have an idea. You're not going to have 100% idea. You will have 40% or 50% idea. That's enough to make a decision. But sometimes what people do is, I want to know more about him. 100%, you'll never get to know. 100% you get to know after being married for like 7-8 years. There are things that I'm still learning about my wife. 8 years of marriage, 2 children and 1 more on the way. Still a lot of things to learn. What we have to look for is the person godly? Are we able to have a good communication with each other? Are we getting along well? And things seem okay. Our future he has a vision for the future. The girl also is very much focused on what God has for her. So all those things are there. That's it. If you think about all the details, if a girl or a boy were to think of all the details, they'll never arrive at that decision. So that arriving at the decision of being committed should be quick, as soon as possible. Prolonging anything more than 30, 45 days or anything beyond that will be painful. Will be painful. So one of the reasons why spirituality matters is when you grow mature in the Lord, you'll be able to make good decisions. Because the Bible, the wisdom that we get from God's Word, helps us make better decisions. If you go through the Bible, especially when a young man, when you go through the book of Proverbs, you'll be able to learn a lot of life lessons. For me, one of the book that was very beneficial, very helpful was Ecclesiastes. I've read it, I don't know how many times. I've just go through it over and over again, because some of those advices that Solomon speaks about, though it's coming from an ungodly man, some of the things that he speaks about is very practical. And you see God's wisdom at work even when he is far away from the Lord. So for me, at that stage, Ecclesiastes was a book I would often read, because it helped me make better decisions. So invest your life, the early stage of your life, in making good decisions. And then when it comes to making decision about your future, you'll be able to do it better, faster. So yeah. All right. I can take one more question and then we can close.
The person is
Yeah.
really mature. They might have all these deep questions ready to shoot fire at them. So, in order to find the right person, or initially in the talking phase, is it okay to just like, okay, you have all these, okay, for instance, who is Jesus to you? Can be a question. So all these things at once can be very deep. So
Yeah.
when is the right time to, because when we know those questions, we kind of can understand if they're godly in the sense that you are looking for. So when do you assess all those things?
It's a good question. How do you assess godliness? Is it by asking question, who is Jesus to you and all that? Now, let's say if it's a boy and a girl, okay, and a girl is asking the question to a boy, he will give the best answer possible because he likes the girl. Okay. Now, how do you decide if the boy is godly? Is not by asking questions. Is by watching his character, which will take time. Now, what you should do is, don't, like in a situation like this, the girl shouldn't come into the boy or anything, but just observe from a distance. Observe from a distance. And then make a decision. Because answering who Jesus is very easy. But is he really your Lord and your God? Do you really believe in him is another very deep question. That you can figure out only if they are, that you can figure out only based on their character. Yeah.
So by their fruits.
Yeah, by the fruits. You'll be able to, if a girl is looking for someone, they'll be able to see and observe them in certain situations. How do they handle themselves? They'll be able to observe. So, and I think it's God's divine wisdom at work. They'll be able to see more. The friends may not observe, but that girl will observe everything. She'll be able to see the red flags or whatever flag is there. She'll be able to see it and decide. So, decision about godliness is not made by asking questions. Because men are smart. Yes. Today there's Chat GPT and Gemini by Google, all those things. You can get answers. I have some of my work, I use Google's Gemini, and I was looking for a solution, a particular solution. So I put it on my phone. I was driving, and it was like someone sitting next to me and having a conversation. I was talking, and AI will be talking, and when I talk, it'll stop and listen and talk like a person. So you can get answers about anything nowadays. So asking questions, uh, like avoid seeing dating as an interview, or an analysis. More of an observation. How are they? Uh, so we'll talk more in the coming days. We'll have, I think, another 3 or 4 sessions. And if you want me to address on any specific subject related to this, you can let me know. Yes? I'll be more than happy to share with you. Let's pray. Lord, we want to thank you for this time that we had where we discussed and studied about relationships according to your word. Lord, our heart's desire is that young people will find godly spouses that will bring you glory and honor. They're living in this world where the enemy is trying to lead them or distract them or take them away in different ways. But Lord, I pray that each one will make a godly decision. May they receive wisdom from above that will empower them to choose the right partner. I pray, Lord, that they will find someone that will please them and more than anything, please you. Thank you, Lord, for this time. Help us to have productive sessions and blessed sessions in the coming days as well. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you all.